hate telling tales out of school. I was really worried about the topic at first. I thought, gosh, I've got a lot of years and a lot of things to think about. Would I talk about middle school, which was horrible? Was I going to talk about high school? Was I going to talk about the 13 years I was a parapro at Ypsilanti? Was I going to talk about the last 6 or 7 years I've been a social worker with Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor? And then I thought, nah, I'm going to go way back. Way, way back. Way back to St. Joe's Catholic School. I was 5. That's way back. Kindergarten. It was a wintry day in Owasso, Michigan. Not the most diverse area for a biracial kid to live in. Not very friendly teachers. I remember we were lining up to go to church, which we did every Friday. And I got in line between Dave Weitengruber and Sean Warden, because I'm Woods, right? And it was alphabetical order, obviously. Unfortunately, Sean Warden wasn't there that day. And I was last. So I also had the privilege, the big time privilege, of wearing my brother's hand-me-down, amazing snowsuit. It was awesome. It had the big buckle with a black belt, and it had the zippers on the side so that you could fit your moon boots in there. And it started to zip at the ankle, and some of you probably understand or remember these snowsuits. It started to zip at the ankle and went all the way to my chin with one zip. You literally, generally had to lay down in them to put them on. I was pretty proud of that snowsuit, but unfortunately I was standing in that line to get ready for church, and I couldn't zip it. And I remember I was pulling, and I was pulling, I was pulling, and I called out, "Miss Huff!" That was my teacher. And she lovingly didn't even look up and said, "Quiet!" Okay, all right, I'll be quiet. I continued to zip. I asked Dave, "Can you help me out?" He was not turning around because Mrs. Huff was going to yell at him too. So I continued to try to zip my zipper. I turned around. I was zipping, 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 zipping. I'm 5, right? And then I look up and I realize they're all gone. They have left the room. I am by myself. I walked up to the door and I peeked around the corner and I could just barely make out Dave Weitengruber going through the doors to cross the street to the church. And then I did what all 5-year-olds do. I cried. And I cried hard. And I tried to zip my zipper and nothing was working, and then it happened. I heard the clomp. It was a very faint clomp, but it was a clomp nonetheless. Someone was coming. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know what they were bringing with them. I didn't know if I was going to get spanked because, yes, back in those days you could get spanked. And so I did the next best thing I knew how to do, and I ran to the closet. It was one of those great old closet, wooden door, swings open like this, top is open, bottom is open. I closed myself in it because I knew no one would see me there, right? My moon boots, I'm sure, were out the bottom. My hair was probably tufting out the top. And I was crying, right? But when you're 5, you don't really realize that sound travels. So I was standing there and I could still see through the crack, not enough to see the whole person, but enough to see the shoes. They were little bitty heels, and they were coming at me, and I couldn't figure out why they knew I was in the closet. Why are they coming? Why are they coming? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And before I knew it, the doors had flung open, and there I stood, and I opened my eyes, and it was Sister Joan. And I waited for her to yell at me. And she said, "Camille, why are you in the closet?" And of course, I answered her very clearly, "I couldn't open my zipper, get my zipper up, Miss Huff yelled, and they all left." And that's exactly how it sounded. And she took me by the hand. She took me out. She took the snowsuit off of me. She fixed the zipper. She had me lay down. We zipped that sucker up. We stood up. She held my hand. She walked me across the street, all the way to the church, and I remember thinking how amazing it was that she actually walked outside without a coat, right? I was 5, I was like, wow, she's amazing. She's not even, she's not even frostbit. My mom said I'd be frostbit if I didn't come out, with my snowsuit. And Sister Joan, she's just like rocking it. So we got to the church, and we walked in, and she pointed to where my class was, and we sat in the same place every week. And I went up, and I sat down, and Miss Huff was sitting behind me, and I was so happy to be there. And then she leaned up, and it was like a hiss in my ear, and she said, "Where were you?" And I don't think it was her voice that I really remembered. It was because I had turned my face ever so slightly, and I could see her face, and it looked horrifying. And I started to say I couldn't zip my, and she said, "Be quiet." I said, okay. So we got through Mass, right? Went back to class. We're all sitting on the floor, and she's talking about how people behaved at church, and she's giving praises to some, and she's saying some were talking, and I'm sitting in the back, and it was just suddenly like out of nowhere, and she says, "And Camille Woods." My name is just resonating through the room. And she says, "I don't know where you were, but you weren't where you were supposed to be." Now, of course, we all realize in today's world, she would have been like on CNN, right? Because I got left in the classroom. But apparently, in 1976, it's your fault when you're 5 and you get left in the classroom alone. So, because of that, she put me in the corner. And in those times, of course, obviously, you could do that. So, I went and I stood in the corner, and I remember to this day the humiliation I felt of all the eyes watching me go over to the corner, and all the kids kind of snickering because I was in trouble. I don't remember how long I stood in that corner, I just remember standing in the corner. And you would think, like 40-some years later, that the thing I would remember would be my Savior, right? It would be my Savior. But at 5, all those years ago, I realized that day that a teacher could make or break your day, right? And your educational process. So 40-some years later, it isn't Sister Joan that I recall the most. It's Miss Huff yelling for me to be quiet. It's Miss Huff hissing in my ear. It's Miss Huff sending me to the corner. And I'm so glad, after I decided to become an educator and work with students, that I have come across far more Sister Jones than I have Miss Huffs. But it makes me remember that it only takes one Miss Huff to ruin something for a child, and to give them a memory that lasts from 1976, I'm not aging myself, 1976 to 2019, as if it just happened yesterday. Thank you.